This one's a classic.
In the last video I made covering the updates of global MapleStory, we discussed the launch of GMS in September 2004 all the way up to version 92, which was right before the Big Bang update. If you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend you watch it before this one. In this video, we're going to begin the long, arduous process of covering every update after the Big Bang update on December 7th, 2010, up until the Reboot update on December 2nd, 2015. Almost exactly 5 years. This is another massive chunk of time that defines the game within a specific era, known as the Big Bang era. This era of the game was defined by experimental updates, massive content additions, Nexon's shift towards adding new classes on a regular basis, and an overall change in the way the game simply felt to play. Though it took many years and the overall popularity of the game started to dwindle towards the end of this Big Bang era, I find myself viewing this period of time with more nostalgia the older I become. We're talking about MapleStory as it existed 15 plus years ago now, and that's no small length of time. Patch notes and information for these versions are generally far more readily available than with the pre-Big Bang updates. Pretty much every single version has a title associated with it as well, which is something we saw towards the end of the pre-Big Bang era every so often, and this would become the new standard. We also see a shift towards multi-part updates. At the beginning, these will fall under the same version, but that's not really consistent, and it will change eventually. Sometimes part 4 of an update would take place in a new version number. It's kind of arbitrary. I've wanted to take a look at this era of the game for a couple years now, digging through archives of various old forums and finding little interesting pieces of information that I can compile and share with you tonight. This period of time marks the beginning of real MapleStory content creation as well, with many creators before myself paving the road I've followed up until now that allows this video to even exist in the first place, so thank you to them. With all that being said, thank you for joining me as we look back at this increasingly more nostalgic era of one of our favorite MMOs. Before we get into discussing the Big Bang updates, this video is sponsored by Eidolon. We'll discuss that more later in the video. In my endless pursuit to chase that feeling of progression in MMOs, I'll be setting up my characters to do some AFK skilling, and we'll check back in on them soon. The Big Bang update was once considered MapleStory's largest update by a large margin. There were so many overhauls and massive system changes, and I don't think it's any secret that we as a community tend to view UI overhauls as definitive markers of a new era. In 2026 and beyond, the Big Bang update might not hold that prestigious title of MapleStory's largest update anymore, though. There have simply been too many large, grandiose updates since this time in late 2010. While I could sit here and go over every little individual change, that would probably take a few hours. We can go over a few things at least. First of all, we saw a huge reduction in the amount of XP required to level at all levels. By level 200, the total XP required was completely halved. Obviously, this makes leveling faster, but it wasn't as linear of a leveling speed increase as you might initially think, given how many changes were made to map layouts and monster stats. The formulas for damage dealt and taken were even overhauled. However, what I personally remember most vividly is the accuracy formula being changed to heavily favor level difference over any other stat. On one hand, this was a positive change. Every level difference between you and the monster resulted in 5% miss rate. So the consideration for how much dex and accuracy to acquire for warriors and buccaneers was no longer as important. I'm not even sure it mattered at all anymore. On the other hand, this did hurt classes who never struggled with accuracy, as they would now be greeted by a miss if they were too low level relative to the monster they were attacking. Overall, I think this was a good change, but it's also a good example of how the game slowly started to do away with some of its identity. Diluting every class's quirks into a universal one-size-fits-all box is one of the most heavily discussed controversies of the Big Bang era, and this won't be the last time we see this. It's a talking point that will become more and more relevant as updates progress. Maps were overhauled, and this is when we saw the addition of the 6-path crossway map. Bye-bye old Victoria Island. Even at the time, this was a very controversial change. The Victoria Island world map has evolved a number of times over the years, with its original design allowing players to walk around the entirety of the island in a circle, hitting every town besides Sleepywood along the way. This change made it so that you had to pass through this 6-path crossway if you were to move from town to town without the taxi. I have a lot of complicated thoughts about this. The lore reason given for these changes was something to do with the Black Mage, though I don't claim to understand it thoroughly. Suffice it to say, I didn't think this was a good change. The 1024 by 768 resolution was added, making this the first time the resolution of the game could be changed. The UI received a massive overhaul, as we are probably all aware. It wasn't the first time the UI had been altered, or massively changed for that matter. There was a very early beta patch for GMS that changed the size of the HP, MP, and XP bars, but this Big Bang UI change was a far more drastic overhaul. And so this made it the third major UI version of MapleStory. Changing of the UI is a massive alteration for any game. While it isn't a compulsory adjustment to indicate massive content changes, it does leave a huge imprint on the minds of the players as this is a new era and things are different now. When it's the one thing you see throughout your entire time playing, it really does influence one's opinion of the state of the game. Every class in the game saw an overhaul of their skills, but specifics were not stated in the patch notes. According to the patch notes, skills for all jobs have been streamlined and consolidated into the most useful ones. There are so many changes to skills, I don't think I could cover them in any sort of reasonable time frame. These changes included things like removing the first job passive HP and MP recovery skills, giving White Knights battle orders, giving mages elemental decrease and teleport mastery, and giving archers evasion boost. It was a huge shift for every class, really. A lot of monsters had their stats changed drastically in some cases to accommodate a more streamlined and cohesive experience. Then there are the smaller things, such as town-specific hair coupons being removed, as well as the lens coupon being changed to allow players to activate them anywhere in the game. And honestly, streamlined and cohesive is probably the best way to describe the Big Bang update overall. Everything was streamlined, for better or worse. A lot of the fun, niche things you used to be able to do were beginning to be removed from the game in favor of this streamlined experience. Again, where the idea of Big Bang's homogenization of systems comes from. Well, it's not so much of an idea as it is what actually happened. We got some cool events with this update. There's the Evolving Ring event where you could receive an untradeable Evolving Ring and upgrade it up to 17 times by staying logged in for 1 hour per day. At the end of the event, you could talk to Gaga to get it exchanged for a tradable version. So this is where these rings come from, and I actually did not know that until doing research for this video. You can see the Big Bang logo on them too, but it's obscured just enough on the tradable version of the ring that I never realized that that's what it's supposed to be. I thought it was like a flower ribbon. There were resistance events for the upcoming release of Wild Hunter and Battle Mage. Reaching level milestones would reward the player with either a resistance energy capsule, which gave a large amount of XP only to a future resistance character, or a Resistance weapon box, which could only be opened by a Resistance character and contained either a Revolution crossbow or Revolution staff. These are super cool looking rare weapons that I didn't know existed until now. I don't think I've ever seen them in game. We received 2 new worlds with the Big Bang update, likely in preparation for the increase in player base: El Nido and Zenith, GMS's 12th and 13th worlds. If a new character in these worlds reached level 70, Cassandra would give them an El Nido or Zenith bandana, depending on the world. At this point though, reaching level 70 was downright easy. It was very much unlike the pre-Big Bang era, where level 70 was kind of an accomplishment. After this update, it became something you could knock out in just about a day if you grinded hard enough and spent enough on 2x coupons, and it would only get easier to do so as the game was updated. And those are the major highlights of the Big Bang update. We're entering an era of the game that I very fondly remember, despite my historical indifference towards it. Interestingly, during this version, Nexon forgot to update a few enemies to have XP that was in line with the rest of the formula overhauls. Truckers, Galloperas, Vicarolas, Booper Scarlions, and multiple other non-KMS monsters were all giving more XP than intended during this patch. Truckers specifically, which were very commonly trained on Monster in like the 40s, were giving 3 times the XP they were supposed to. I mentioned this in my iceberg video, but at the time I had no clue what the entry was referring to. Turns out, this is what it was referring to: the weird non-KMS monsters who made leveling super easy. Well, now we know. The general response to the Big Bang update was positivity, optimism, and deep curiosity. Up until this point, we hadn't seen one single update this large. We had received new classes, XP curve reductions, etc., but nothing to this degree, and definitely not all at once. Reading discussions surrounding the Big Bang update is very funny in hindsight, with people speculating that Nexon would increase the level cap eventually. They were right, of course. It's easy to see the writing on the wall when leveling is constantly being made easier. This interaction taken from Spato's blog is also very funny to me. Increasing the levels is just stupid. Why? Because would it be fair to Fangblade and other level 200s? I love the idea that Nexon was making massive game-defining decisions based on how fair it either was or wasn't to Fangblade. I wonder what's going to happen after they release the Black Mage boss and after it gets defeated. Turns out, So Badass knew the answer the whole time. An even stronger boss. Which is, yeah, that's what happened. This next comment is very long and super hard to read, so I'll paraphrase it a bit. I simply had to comment on generally how pleased I am with this approaching update, such as the huge amount of effort they are putting into making the game a much more fun and easier experience for everyone. The classes look greatly tied together and cohesive. And I think the part of this post that stings to me the most is this line. The final and most important thing that I wanted to address is that I'm really happy with the actual coordination of changing Maple up, making it into even more of a cooperative MMO than it once was. This leads me to believe we are headed towards a more dynamic and cooperative future to Maple. I really do hope that is the case, especially with all the new exciting content on the horizon. As we know, MapleStory in the modern day is often described as a single-player experience. There's no reason to group up unless you have to in order to clear a boss, and though this is just one person's opinion, to realize that this sentiment ever existed pre-Big Bang is kind of a shock to me. It's also a bit unfortunate to look back and see the optimism people had for the Big Bang update, hoping it would solve a lot of the game's issues. To be completely honest with you, I don't really know what happens from this point on, so I have no answer for this. What I do know, however, is that the opinion of MapleStory throughout the entire history of the game, as I've learned throughout my research, has been this limbo state. With the Big Bang update, though, I would argue that the overall optimism present in the community was at a major high. All the comments I see are engaging with the newly developed story of the Black Mage and the heroes, the exciting future of the game heading in a different direction. I think everyone was caught off guard by the announcement, since this was the first time we had seen changes this massive. Over the next few hours, as we discussed the following years of the game's life, we'll find out just how much these changes lived up to the hype. I could continue to discuss this for a very long time, so I'll stop here for now. After this initial surge of excitement, the hype for the Big Bang update died kind of quickly. Nexon would shift their presentation of MapleStory after this update, positioning every major update as this important, massive event, which was very good for generating hype. We were all looking forward to what would come next. Version 94 contained the release of the first two resistance classes in MapleStory, Battle Mage and Wild Hunter. These new classes were released so close to the pre-Big Bang era that we even have footage of both Wild Hunter and Battle Mage with the old UI in the KMS test server. Of course, in GMS we never actually saw these classes until after Big Bang. Most importantly though, this update contained the Christmas events. Happyville was made available once again with a variety of quests, you know how it goes. The NPC Dewey was retired as of this update, previously serving as a way to send items and mesos to players. I guess they figured they no longer needed this system in the game. Apparently he's sipping lemonade on an island off the coast of Florina Beach. Sweet world building, Nexon. Too bad you removed Florina Beach for years. I'm very upset about that still. And this was the final update of 2010. Big Bang being released so close to the end of the year feels very weird in hindsight. It doesn't matter, of course, but it's just been such a long time since I had thought so deeply about the Big Bang update that I forgot it happened in December. Say hello to 2011. What felt like a futuristic era at the time is now 15 plus years in the past, something we all just love to think about. Version 95 was the release of Mechanic, the third resistance class. Interestingly, and this is perhaps relevant to the Mechanic race to 200 specifically, citizens created before the update were freely allowed to job advance to Mechanic. I'm not sure this had a huge impact though, since getting to level 10 took like maybe 10 minutes, but it would be exciting to prepare a new character in advance for a new class release. This is one of the rare instances where that was even possible. The NPC Donald was released in version 95 replacing Dewey. The patch notes say that Donald is an NPC that will be used for specific official communications from Nexon. This was probably his purpose, but I don't recall him ever doing anything personally. The pay-to-win Golden Temple saw its return, including the premium golden ticket cash item required to access it. Nexon really loved milking this one specific event back in the day with its superior training maps and Ravana boss. It must have been very lucrative. I want to thank Shakar96 for their WordPress blog that extensively documented a huge amount of information and images from this point until basically the end of 2012. It was very helpful for putting together this video. This update is known as the Aftershock update, but this title is only referenced in the header image. This update contained some massive game-changing content though, mostly surrounding Cygnus Knights. Every Cygnus Knight from this point on would receive a bonus 10% XP after they leveled, effectively giving them a small permanent XP bonus. It wasn't your traditional 10% increase in XP gained, however, so I think this XP could still be lost if the player dies. One update that a lot of people often mistake for having been released pre-Big Bang, myself included, is the release of Ultimate Explorers. I plan on going in depth into Cygnus Knights in the future on their own, covering Ultimate Explorers as well, so we'll just go over the basics here and try not to cover them too extensively. To create an Ultimate Explorer, the player had to get a Cygnus Knight to level 120 and complete the Empress's Grace quest, a pretty tough quest line that required 10 Paradots, which were an extremely rare drop from Harpies and Leafree. The patch notes even specified that the drop rate for these Paradots is super low and that it's by design, likely to avoid receiving tons of emails from angry players wondering why the drop rate was so damn low. Any Explorer could be created as an Ultimate Explorer with the exception of Dual Blade. This Ultimate Explorer would receive the Empress's Might skill, a set of armor, and a successor medal based on the IGN of the player's Cygnus Knight. Most impactfully though, they'd receive a Cygnus Knight skill based on their job, and these skills were arguably the strongest motivator for creating an Ultimate Explorer. There are very few characters in the game today who still have access to these now very outdated and long unobtainable skills. Next, within the same update, the release of Von Leon and Lion King's Castle, also known as Lionheart Castle or LHC colloquially. Surprisingly, this content was made available only a few months after the Big Bang update. We were shockingly close to having this content pre-Big Bang, if you can believe it. The Von Leon fight required a party of between 6 to 30 players, all of whom had to be above level 120, which wasn't crazy hard to reach at this point, but was still somewhat of an accomplishment. It's also worth noting that a group of level 120s probably wasn't going to kill him. The fight also had a potion cooldown, possibly making it the first boss fight to implement such a restriction, though I don't know this for certain. Von Leon equipment used to be a lot more complicated to acquire compared to the simple system we have nowadays of just trading in the coins or getting the drops directly. You used to have to defeat Von Leon, collect the Lion King's medals he dropped, and then use purification totems that dropped from monsters in LHC to turn the Lion King's medals into noble medals or royal medals, depending on the number of purification totems used. Noble medals were used to purchase the gloves, shoes, and capes, and the royal medals were used to purchase the hats, overalls, and weapons, a system that we would see used time and time again for various new gear sets. The 6-piece set gave a massive 30% ignore enemy defense, which was a stat that was tough to come by in this era, so this immediately became the new best in slot endgame gear upon its release, even if you were to ignore it simply having higher stats. It looked pretty cool too. The purification totem market was massive and rewarded anyone who participated. At this time, I wasn't actually playing myself, so by the time I came back to the game, Von Leon gear was already mostly obsolete. You could buy a full set for like maybe a few mil in the free market. So I never saw the purification totem Von Leon meta at its peak. I heard about it though. LHC itself was a series of training maps that encouraged party play by rewarding parties with bonus XP up to plus 250% for a full party of 6. These monsters had an absurd amount of HP and would hit hard, but were considered normal monsters outside of their party bonus. This means that damage over time skills could be used on them, if I remember correctly, as well as anything else that a normal monster would be susceptible to. New areas in Lionheart Castle would be unlocked as players completed a quest, in similar fashion to how Temple of Time progression functioned. Most of us probably remember LHC training. It's one of my fondest memories of this era of MapleStory. I honestly had no idea it was released so soon after the Big Bang update, but LHC would go on to remain the greatest training spot for level 120 to 200 for this period of time, and for a good while after this. New area bosses called Master Monsters were added: Snow Witch, Bamboo Warrior, and Richie. They were all given quest lines as well. From what I remember, these monsters functioned differently from normal area bosses, acting as a sort of anti-bot measure, sending players back to town if they were attacked before the player interacted with an NPC that was found on the map. Then there was the guild revamp. This was an overhaul to the guild system that introduced guild skills for the very first time, as well as the potions that are given out every Monday. systems that have been changed as of modern MapleStory, but have roots as old as 15 plus years ago. Elemental wands and staves had their bonus and reduction attributes reduced. The effectiveness of these bonuses and penalties was likely lowered to help encourage the use of the Von Leon set, which would have been better in most scenarios anyway, mostly because of the 30% IED. Unless I'm totally mistaken. That's interesting to think about. Sometime around this period of time, it's not, from what I can tell, mentioned anywhere on the website, but it has to be somewhere, Crease was released. Crease is, if you know me, one of my favorite areas in MapleStory. It's kind of a huge staple of this era of the game. You pretty much always trained here from level 55 to 70. And I don't know why I can't seem to find any information about it on the official website. However, it was around this time that it was released. Looking through the version 96 files, it's there, so. You can think of Crease as being basically the first theme dungeon added to MapleStory. Even at the time, people weren't really a huge fan of it. It was just a long series of maps where you would start a quest line, you would go kill monsters, you would go back to the first map, get another quest, go a few maps out, kill monsters, go back, get a new quest, go even further, then go back, and you just kind of repeated that until you reached level 70. The thing is, Crease has been removed from the game, and while it was kind of a mediocre, tedious theme dungeon, I have fond memories of it, and it is very much an important piece of this era of MapleStory. The 6th anniversary event, titled Jubilation, began as of this update and lasted until June 14th. The NPCs Inky and Inkwell had shops set up to sell anniversary items for 6th anniversary silver coins, including the new level 77 Maple weapons, which were the first Maple weapons added after the level 64 weapons. This anniversary event allowed players access to all Maple anniversary items that had been released up until this point, and Basil Market even had an extensive drop table listing every single possible Maple weapon drop. Damn, that website was good. There were about 1 billion events related to this anniversary update, including a balloon hunt PQ, maple leaf rewards for leveling up, the maple tree event where players donated maple leaves to grow a tree that eventually dropped golden maple leaves. These golden maple leaves were then turned into aramia to receive either regular maple leaves, a maple weapon, a maple pendant, or the chair underneath the maple tree, which is one of my favorite chairs of all time, actually. And I believe it was the default chair in Artale for a time. I remember earning it from the event and feeling like a weird sense of accomplishment at the time, but I also remember this happening before Big Bang, so maybe my timeline's wrong. There was also the Family Loyalty Forever event that rewarded the Family Loyalty Forever medal, a relatively popular collector's medal. Between this update and the last update, the Maker System items were slowly being removed from monster drop pools in preparation for the crafting overhaul that would be taking place soon. Last update attempted to remove everything, but it seems they forgot about magic powders and finally removed them from the drop pool in this update. The second Cake vs. Pie event, a staple of this era of MapleStory and a very fun remnant of the lol so random era of the internet. This one functioned exactly the same as the last one, but had one addition. Controlling the town also granted your faction access to Sweet Cake Hill. This map held entrances to 3 mini dungeons with level 25, 40, and 70 monsters respectively. Insignias were the main reward for participating in the Cake vs. Pie battles, and the most expensive rewards were the blueberry and strawberry shoulders. You could also buy white and chaos scrolls for far less than the cost of one of these shoulders, but I'm not sure if there was any purchase limit or how hard it was to get the insignias to begin with. Now we enter our first multi-part update, the Chaos update. considered a very big turning point for the game, where a lot of systems were altered and new content was added. There's a lot to go over with the Chaos update, and this is only the first part of it. Replacing Lionheart Castle grinding for level 160 plus players, which is where it started to slow down a little bit, the Gate to the Future was released. This included Hinnesis Ruins and Dark Erev at the time, featuring some solo grinding spots, as well as the Night Stronghold, which contained party training areas including Drill Hall. Like Lionheart Castle, these monsters were very strong and had the same bonus XP party play system, once again incentivizing party play. As of this update, I'm not 100% sure if players were strong enough to realistically train at Drill Hall, but it did eventually become the best training spot for 160 plus. The Gate to the Future is one of my favorite areas from this era of the game. It remained relevant for a very long time too. I remember farming monsters here as late as like 2021. It's over 10 years. Empress Cygnus was released in this update as well. Between 3 to 18 level 170 plus characters were required to attempt the battle, and they did not opt to implement the multiple lives system for this boss fight. You had to be revived by a bishop or use a Wheel of Destiny, which was probably very profitable for them. I believe Empress Cygnus was mathematically unkillable as of this update, much like Hard Magnus, especially without multiple lives or gear stronger than the Von Leon set. This made Empress Cygnus another instance of Nexon trapping hackers by releasing an unkillable boss that they could track kills for. In my MapleStory Iceberg video, I mentioned how Nexon lied about adding a medal to the game that was rewarded to the first players who killed Hard Magnus, which was simply a way to incentivize hackers to self-snitch by clearing a boss that Nexon knew was literally impossible for anyone to kill legitimately. This was much of the same, except there was no grand announcement of an exclusive item with Empress Cygnus's addition. I'm sure people got banned for killing her though. Of course, this is all assuming that she was unkillable, which I don't actually know for certain. This is also the update that introduced the iconic Mystery Mastery books. These dropped in place of the ever-increasing pool of normal Mastery books and would turn into a random Mastery book upon use. I'm not entirely sure whether regular Mastery books were removed from drop pools yet though. The interesting thing about these mystery books is that they could roll some of the extremely rare and valuable mastery books, including books that were meant to be locked behind endgame bosses. So if you rolled Maple Warrior 30 or a highly sought after skill that was still a little tough to come by like Triple Throw 30, you could make some good mesos without even having to kill the boss or being a high level or putting in effort. This of course meant that Mystery Mastery books had a mathematical expected value based on the rates of skill books. It wasn't unheard of for players to buy hundreds of these at once in hopes of making a profit by rolling a couple valuable books, or for players to just get super lucky by rolling an expensive book for their class that they weren't otherwise going to be able to afford. This was one of the many things that contributed to homogenization of MapleStory's systems, being one of the more obvious examples, but I think this was one of the few that actually still improved the experience overall. It's not a perfect implementation. A better version of this Mystery Mastery book system might exclude high-tier, extremely valuable books, but this was still one of the few good changes of the era, in my opinion. Finally, for the actual updates, there was the addition of the traits system. Again, we find that this is a system that persists in modern MapleStory, mostly unchanged nowadays, but I'm sure it will be at some point, making this statement similarly outdated. There were a few events, the most noteworthy of which being the Jumpstart character event, the Hyper Teleport Rock preview event, and the release of the Chaos World that had the same rewards we're used to seeing upon release of a new world at this point. The Jumpstart character event was an event wherein you could immediately create a new level 50 Aaron, Evan, or Dual Blade as long as you had a level 70 plus character. possibly in an attempt to get player numbers up for those classes, but also probably because of the skill changes they received, which we'll discuss in a moment. The Hyper Teleport Rock preview event was simply a way to show off to players the new Hyper Teleport Rock item that had unlimited teleports until it expired. There was also a cute little event called 2011 Summer Boom Up event, where players would receive bonus XP during specific times of day based on their level. The Maker skill was finally completely removed as of this update. There were a few small changes to the layout of the world and a few convenience improvements, such as the Helios Tower elevator always being open and the travel time being shortened to 9 seconds down from a minute. It's a smaller, less impactful convenience thing, but it's worth keeping in mind small changes like this because they really do add up to making the game feel drastically different between the Big Bang and old school eras. Net's Pyramid PQ was closed indefinitely. Cygnus Knights now required 20 Matteon tentacles for their 3rd job advancement, which is super weird, and a lot of classes received some pretty significant skill changes. Aaron's, Evans, and Dual Blades all received a reorganization of their skills, changing attack speeds, skill levels, damage values, etc. This was also the update where Mechanic received a ton of nerfs. Pretty much every skill they had was weakened, and a ton of delay was added to a lot of their kit as well. This was likely the turning point where Mechanic began to get the reputation of being a clunky, slow class. Explorer Magicians as a whole were all given damage buffs. It's important to note that the magic attack formula was heavily altered to be more in line with the weapon attack formulas as of the Big Bang update, one of the many massive overhauls of skills and systems. I believe these damage buffs were in an attempt to help bring them more in line with everyone else's damage. Ultimate Explorer Cygnus skills were modified to be more in line with their original design. But with Ultimate Explorers only being available as of version 96, I'm not entirely sure how much these skills were altered. Warriors had their damage increased across the board, Archers had their damage increased, and Snipe was changed to hit 4 lines against bosses, giving Marksman a huge damage increase. Shadowers were buffed pretty significantly, including a change to Assassinate that will automatically trigger Darksight if the skill is used outside of Darksight. Nightlord received arguably the single best change that the game has ever seen. Lucky 7 and Triple Throw's formula was completely redesigned to be just like other attacking skills, no longer scaling solely based off of luck, but its damage was still increased overall. Buccaneers had all of their skill damage and range increased, and Corsair's battleship's durability and cooldown mechanic were completely removed. So this is peak Corsair gaming after the Chaos update, in my opinion. Infinite Battleship. Chaos Update's skill changes pretty much boiled down to buffing everyone and nerfing mechanics. This is a clear case of power creep, and it's definitely not the last time we'll see this. Better get used to it now. The second part of the Chaos Update took place 10 days after the first. Named Age of Artisans, this update focused primarily on the new crafting system, as well as the release of the new item Shielding Wards, a pay-to-win scroll that protects an item from being destroyed one time at a cost of a whopping $12 per scroll. $12 in 2011. That's $17 in 2025 per scroll, and it probably wasn't too hard to go through a few dozen if you were using 10%. Ardent Mill was released in this update, the entirety of the profession system being released alongside it, but this system has been so extensively documented, I don't feel much need to cover it here. You probably already know about it. Item pots and imps were added, tons of recipes were added, and that's really all there was to the Age of Artisans. A very specialized update. The next part of the Chaos update, called the Age of Battle, was another big one. This update introduced the PvP system known as Battle Square. With 4 separate tiers based on level, there were 2 game modes available. Free-for-all was a mode where 4 to 8 players fought against each other until the timer ran out. Team Match was a mode where 6 to 12 players form 2 teams and battle against the other team. This PvP system even had random item spawns that impacted gameplay, as well as a champion and rage system. Every so often, a random player will be named the champion for a short time. If this champion survives for a full minute, they receive bonus XP and points. If the champion is taken down within this minute, the player who defeats them will instead receive those bonuses. BP was the primary reward of the Battle Square. The BP could be traded in for Gallant Emblems, an item that could be used to purchase a few different items from Larson, and were also used in various crafting recipes. Weirdly, these recipes are still in the game to this day, but Gallant Emblems haven't been available to acquire in years, so the items from these recipes have become completely unobtainable, despite their recipes still being in the game. You see these boots? Yeah. They're lost media. The character stat window was changed to accommodate this new Battle Square PvP system. It displays the character's battle mode, rank, and XP, though this system would quickly be retired, and this would be replaced in the future. Golden Temple was slightly altered to not only give great XP, but also an increased drop chance for maple weapons, as well as a chance to drop reverse and timeless weapons. This was likely because reverse and timeless gear was no longer best in slot with the release of Von Leon gear. Still though, it required the premium golden ticket to enter as always. Yet again, they recycled this content and I still can't believe it. I also can't believe how much I wanted to buy the tickets back in the day and never could. The cap for fame was changed with this update. From launch up until now, the range for fame was this. This update increased the range to this. The rank 1 spot for fame was often contested since someone could be dethroned by one random defame, but near the end of the 30k fame era, Pop My Buckle was rank 1. And Brand would officially become the first player to reach the new cap. The new World Nova was added to the game with the same Meso rewards and the Nova bandana rewarded for reaching level milestones, something we've seen a lot of times now. Shortly after the Age of Battle update, version 100 was released, which was still a continuation of the Chaos update titled Age of Triumph. Age of Triumph added a new battle mode called Capture the Flag. This was actually a GMS exclusive mode, but I don't remember ever participating in it. 6 to 12 players, 2 teams, 1 point per flag capture, 3 points to win. The Silent Crusade and the Crusader Codex were also added with this update. The shop, coins, and codex sets were all made available. This stuff has mostly been removed if I remember correctly, but man, it's crazy how much of this was added as early as 2011. The Gachapon received a pretty cool update. The addition of the August Gachapon Jackpot item, Super Zachem Helmet. The Gachapon Jackpot item was an extremely rare one-time reward per world. Once the item was acquired by someone, all Gachapons in that world would have increased rates of valuable items for the remainder of the update. A pretty smart strategy to sell more Gachapon tickets. Hey guys, there's an extremely rare item in the Gachapon right now, don't you want it? Oh, someone got it, so now you're all rewarded with a higher rate of valuable items. We promise it's not an increase of 0.000001%, which legally allows us to say that it's increased. Buy more Gachapon tickets. The Super Zachem Helmet is so incredibly rare, and it's one of the most valuable collector's items to this day. Due to their rarity, finding one or even seeing one is insanely difficult. This is an item that's almost so rare that it's mostly a legend. They do exist though. As far as miscellaneous changes go, this was the update that restricted the use of most skills in the free market and temporarily closed the entrance to Crimsonwood Keep due to some issues with CWKPQ. So it actually kind of sucked. Alright, let's check in on my Eidolon characters. I've been really getting more and more into progression of character skills lately, and it's been very fun. Yes, I do still spend a lot of time and energy collecting cards. That part hasn't changed, but just look at that, my characters all leveled up while we were discussing early Big Bang updates. I found this game on Steam a while ago now, and I've been really enjoying its progression. There's a good number of skills to level and experience, which can be done passively as we've just seen. I recently unlocked World 4 and gained access to the Pets skill, which you guys know I love. The mix of idle game and MMO elements is very enjoyable. I've been playing Eidolon for a while now, and it's always nice to check back in on my characters at the end of the day and to see my account's further progression. Eidolon doesn't demand as much of my time as other MMOs, and that's extremely valuable to me these days as a busy YouTuber. I can read through an entire video essay script and still progress in-game. Eidolon is available on both iOS and Steam, so I can hop in-game on my phone to check up on things, and whenever I'm at my computer, I can launch the game through Steam, and my account is seamlessly saved to the cloud, which is super convenient. You can play Eidolon for free on Steam using the links posted in the description and the pinned comment. Thanks again to Eidolon for sponsoring this video. Version 101 brought the release of Monster Park in its initial form, as well as 3 new party quests. I've covered all of these in my Party Quest retrospective video, but I've never talked about Monster Park before. Original Monster Park had 3 difficulties, level 13 to 69, level 70 to 119, and level 120 plus. These all required different tickets, which could be purchased in limited quantity from the NPC Mary, or obtained by exchanging 20 pieces of the corresponding ticket, which dropped from monsters at the appropriate level. One of the first world drop additions that started to seriously clutter players' inventories, something we will begin to see more and more often. Monsters within Monster Park could drop normal items and had a higher drop rate than normal monsters. They could also drop commemorative coins to purchase various items from the NPC Laku. At first, the list of purchasable items was very short and specific, and did not include the Monster Park potions we all know. Those didn't come until later. There were a few relatively uninteresting events that rewarded a variety of event items, the most interesting of which being the Knight's Virtue event. This was a daily monster killing / check-in event that rewarded a pair of Knights of Virtue earrings and a title called Virtue's Savior after 10 participations. I mean, I'm kind of a holy warrior / paladin guy, so these sound really cool to me. There was also an Evolving Belt event that functioned similarly to the Evolving Ring event, but it had a less memorable final reward. Version 102 was yet another massive addition to the game, Monster Familiars, another piece of non-KMS content that we received, and that was honestly never very good to begin with. This system originates from JMS, as can be seen in the Tespia server's untranslated UI. The Gachapon Grand Prize, which is the new name of the Gachapon Jackpot, likely to avoid any correlation to gambling, was the Super Pink Adventurer Cape, another extremely valuable and rare item that collectors are still looking for to this day. Again, there were about 1 billion events that all gave the same generic pool of rewards, but version 102 did include one event that is rarely ever discussed but fondly remembered: the Sidekick system. Between levels 15 and 120, you could team up with a partner who was more than 5 levels above or below you to receive bonus stats, XP, fame, and buffs every hour. It seems players needed to be on the same map to receive these bonuses, so this was kind of a duo party system with extra rewards. That guy from earlier talking about how MapleStory is going in a more cooperative direction, hey, this one's for you, bud. There were 2 medals rewarded from this event, the King of Sidekick medal and the God of Sidekick medal. Each rewarded for your lower level sidekick acquiring either 30 or 60 levels while under you. This is something that would be cool as hell to see nowadays, but we know there's not really such a thing as party grinding anymore. This update consisted entirely of bug fixes and one interesting change. The Dark Knight skill Beholder was changed to be called Beholden. File on the South Perry forums believes this to be due to copyright issues with the Beholder monster from Dungeons & Dragons. I can definitely see the resemblance, and it's probably not a coincidence. I'm sure their inspiration was taken from D&D. And we very quickly find ourselves at yet another massive multi-part update, the Legends update. Multiple classes were released in version 104, starting with Cannoneer in part 1. Interestingly, the launch of Cannoneer excluded higher level hand cannons being available for sale in shops. Anything beyond the starter weapon had to be found or crafted, which was a cool inconvenience. Cannoneer also had one of, if not the first link skill in the game, referred to as a blessing in the patch notes. This was the first time link skills like this were considered link skills, with Blessing of the Fairy not quite qualifying as such, at least in the same way. There was an event called Legends 1+1. Upon reaching level 30 and 70, you would receive a potion that contains the amount of XP required to reach that level. This could be repeated up to 3 times for each of the new classes released during the Legends update. The patch notes say that this potion can't be transferred to other characters, so it's basically like a weird roundabout way to give players 2 times XP to level 70 that could only be claimed after reaching that level, and also basically meant that they weren't leveling any faster. It's weird. There was the Legends Award event, which included a massive shop filled with tons of items purchasable with Legends Awards coins. Outside of that shop and the events that rewarded coins, this update had a huge number of events. A lot of them were daily login or monster kill quests that served to reward Legends coins, and maybe a chaos scroll here and there. Among the interesting rewards were the Legends Ring, Elven Glasses, Red and Blue Waist Warmers, Legendary Black Dragon Ring, and a couple trophies. Some other noteworthy changes from the Legends update. The quick move system was added to the game for the first time, something we again still use to this day. The MP increase from int was removed. Prior to this update, all characters would receive an extra 1 MP for every 10 int they had, rounded down. After the Legends update, this bonus only applied to magicians, so at least they retained their higher MP pool, which was very important for them. HP washing was officially killed for the most part. Potion stack size was increased to 300. The job advancements were streamlined for explorers, no longer requiring players to travel back to Victoria Island to get third job. Everything could now be done within Elnath. Professions were rebalanced, making it easier to level each of them. Nautilus Harbor and its interior was altered, updating it to contain all 3 floors on one map, instead of separating them like had been the case since the release of Pirates. The Bowman Instructional School was moved from the far right side of Hinnesis Park to the right side of Hinnesis itself, and a lot of other maps were altered in similar ways. This is also the update where Confusion Fragments, Philosopher's Stones, and Primal Essences were added to the game to be used as crafting materials. It was also when EXP Accumulation Potions and Wealth Acquisition Potions were first made available to craft. So this Legends update is massive, to say the least. This is one of the many updates we saw in early Big Bang that slightly altered the systems that we grew used to over the years, generating a lot of mystery and confusion as to what happened when in this era. Turns out it was a bunch of little changes over a lot of updates. The second part of the Legends update is the release of Mercedes, one of the most hyped classes to ever be released. Cannoneer was cool, but Mercedes was way cooler, the first true combo class with flashy movement abilities, and everyone wanted to play it if only for its link skill that granted plus 10% XP. Releasing this right before Christmas was really cool too, because we were all out of school. We had plenty of time to play the new character, and I remember spending a lot of time playing it with one of my friends. This part of the update was very underwhelming beyond this new class release though. The release of a new class meant a free character slot coupon for every account, they started doing that at this point, and some very uninteresting returning player and new player events that rewarded primarily XP coupons and temporary pets. Very standard fare. Demon Slayer, released immediately after Mercedes. This was the beginning of Nexon seriously pumping out new class releases like crazy. Can you imagine receiving 3 new classes in the span of a single month in modern MapleStory? We usually only receive 1 per year these days. The new class release meant another free character slot coupon, and this part of the update also included 2 times XP events for a couple hours every day of the week for about a month, with a permanent 2 times drop event that lasted from December 8th all the way until January 31st. Pretty wild time frame there, giving everyone, including the massive number of bots, 2 times base drop for almost 2 full months. There were also hot time rewards every day between January 5th and January 11th. Good old hot time. Otherwise, it was your standard event fare. January 11th, nearing the end of the update, was the release of the Super Miracle Cubes. These new cubes allowed items to reach Legendary tier for the first time. Up until now, the highest tier was unique, and this new higher tier was another pretty massive source of power creep. They had to get people killing Empress Cygnus somehow. Also, CWKPQ was still bugged and would remain so for a very long time. And those are the updates of 2010 and 2011. As you can see, there are a lot of weird small changes that happened. I really do enjoy documenting these updates because it's very fun to just look back at the history of the game. Of course, I'm sure I got some things wrong or missed something here and there, I'm not perfect, which is where your guys' comments are super helpful for filling in the gaps. Before we wrap this up, I just want to quickly explain why I decided to do the Big Bang updates in separate videos like this. And honestly, the biggest reason is just that it was a lot easier. Since the game became so much larger in scope after Big Bang, I wanted to make sure I did every update justice and could dedicate more time to each individual update. And we'll be covering 2012 next, so stay tuned for that.